In this segment, we're going to look at all of the relationship building strengths. This is a fun quadrant of strengths to look at. I will tell you right now, if you have two or more strengths in this quadrant or two or more themes in this quadrant, excuse me, it probably is very indicative of who you are. Relationship building themes are really the glue to a team, to a relationship, to an organization. These are the people that slow down. They listen, they hear, and out of that, they are able then to discern what is the next appropriate step or action or word that I should engage in. What we have found with relationship building themes is that many times these are the people that have had friends for life. These are people that don't necessarily need a large network of people around them. Certainly doesn't mean that they don't like people, but they don't need a lot of people. In fact, they are more comfortable with that smaller group, with that more intimate group of individuals in their life. So what we're going to do is walk through each one of these things. Just want to give you a snapshot. If you have one of these themes, then you study it further. If you don't have this theme, this gives you an understanding of what does this mean. Maybe this is somebody that I live with or that I work with, or maybe this is in that next tier. Maybe this is still an always theme for me. It just didn't show up in the top 5. And or maybe this is one of those rarelies that I need to understand, but it isn't going to be something that I embrace on a daily basis. So the first one we want to look at is adaptability, and this is the person that really is the carpe diem person. This is the person that lives in the moment. They are quite fluid, they are quite flexible. I think that the term whatever was developed by an adaptability person because they don't necessarily, unless there's a strong core value tied to something, they can flex and they can flow with what is going on. The next one that we look at is connectedness. The interesting thing about connectedness is it was originally, when the StrengthsFinder was first developed in the early 2000s, was called spirituality. But remember I said that Gallup rolled out to corporate America first, corporate America said, no way, we don't like that phrase. So they changed this phrase or this theme to connectedness, but they never changed the meaning of it. And basically what it is there is no such thing as luck. There are things like divine connection. There is that connectedness that happens. There is that line that's drawn. There is that reason and link between everything. And in leadership, this would be your bridge builder leader or your collaborative leader, your team building leader that recognizes the power of partnership, of who all needs to be there and what voices need to be around. Developer is the multiplier of human potential, and this is the one of the 34 themes that is the giveaway theme. So if you have developer and you're sitting there going, well, I don't develop myself, we're not talking about you right now. We're talking about how you interact with other people. And developers are those individuals that they can't not think of how something impacts someone else. So they might hear about a movie and go, oh, Jill would love this movie. I got to tell her about it. Or this conference is coming up. Bob would be perfect for this conference. I got to tell him about this. Or a book or whatever. There's that place of development. That's what a developer is. They know how people can grow, and they're not afraid to invest and talk about that to others. Now, empathy, in Gallup's definition of empathy, it is understanding but not necessarily agreement. Okay, if we have understanding and agreement together, that really is sympathy, and at its extreme, it can be pity. So what we want to look at here for empathy is that ability to pick up on somebody else's feelings. You know, this idea of I can hear their needs screaming at me. I actually got that phrase from a student a while ago who thought she wanted to be a band director. She had come to school for music education until she got into the band room with 30, 40 students in there. And because she is so one-on-one, because that's what relationship building is, one-on-one and small groups, she couldn't handle 30, 40 students looking at her with needs. And she just said in our consultation, I can just hear their needs screaming at me and there's nothing I can do about it. So this reality of empathy is really getting into other people's skin and seeing life through their eyes and ears and what's going on. Now, Harmony has probably been the most difficult, I will be honest, for me to understand, and I think for Gallup on one hand too, because harmony at the inception and the development of the StrengthsFinder was all about conflict avoidance. You know, people who they thought would come up with the theme of harmony were people who ran away, walked away, and avoided conflict, sometimes ignored it. What we found out really quickly is many people that got the theme of harmony were not people who were afraid of conflict. In fact, they were willing to walk into conflict and find a basis, kind of a consensus, a foundation upon a common denominator, let's use that word, to build upon in order to work through that conflict. So those really are two opposite extremes, but those are two tentacles of what harmony looks like. And then in the past few years, we've also learned that many people who end up with this theme of harmony are people who are looking for balance. They're looking for balance, and it might be in varieties of ways. Maybe it's balance in lifestyle. They've just got to figure out how to get a handle on life. Or maybe it's a balance in philosophies or ideologies or time, whatever it is, or a relationship, looking for balance. So wherever you are, if you are the person with harmony, this is a fascinating one. Remember, read your paragraphs carefully. And this will be one, especially if you are sitting in team, maybe you are with family or maybe you are in your work group, put those paragraphs next to each other. There's going to be a distinction between the way you all look at harmony. Includer, this is the person who just kind of comes along and scoops everybody up. You know, includers don't want anybody to be left out. And so this idea of acceptance, awareness, there's room for one more. And so that scenario of inviting people out on a Friday night, an includer would say, oh, yeah, this group of people, 4 of us are going out, but oh, you know what, Mary's all by herself right now. Come on, Mary, come with us. The person with includer will say that. The person who has includer as number 34 was going to say, what's she doing here? You know, so includer is one of those people that just says there's always room for one more. Individualization is an interesting theme. Gallup says this is the most rare of the 34. And basically what individualization is looking at is exactly what it says, values the individual uniqueness in others. In other words, individualization, there's no such thing as cloning, and comparison isn't even part of the vocabulary, because individualization has that capacity, that ability, that want to see people for who they are and appreciate them for who they are. And this can also be into beyond people, but even into ideas or projects or whatever, that capacity to look in and of itself. That is individualization. And then positivity, this is always a fun one because this is contagious enthusiasm, and many times we know these people just by their demeanor. They either have a smile on their face, they are very warm, they are open, they are receptive, sees potential, kind of that glass half full. Sometimes people with positivity will say, well, I don't think everybody likes that, and you know what? Not everybody appreciates those of us that have positivity, especially if they want to dwell on something or kind of beat something to death. It doesn't mean positivity won't go there, and it doesn't mean positivity can't get in a funk, but there's 2 words that I really like with positivity, and they are the words possibility and probability. For people with positivity, pretty much everything is possible. They'll find a place to make everything possible, but they also they're intuitive enough, they are able to understand not everything's going to be probable. Okay, so that idea, what happens when a person with positivity gets in that funk, the difference is they don't tend to stay there, okay? They have the capacity to gain some traction and draw out and get that train going again to move toward the direction they want to move to. And then our last one down here is the relator. This really is the crux, you know, kind of the top of the filter for what this quadrant is about. But building in-depth relationships, really enjoying one-on-one interactions. I know in leadership and with teams that I have, I love these kind of people. This is actually who I am. I love getting to know people at a deep level in order to know how to find best next steps for them. Relators tend to have friends for a long time, not necessarily necessarily large groups of friends, but still enjoy those opportunities. A little bit later, we're going to find out how these themes work on continuum with each other. But as we look at that, figure out right now, again, this is a quadrant that don't be surprised if you have 2 or 3 or 4 in these, that every single one of these doesn't describe who you are, and or you are marking always beside the ones that didn't show up.